Our final topic of the course is ritual and politics. Ritual is everywhere in our political world. From marches to coronations, inauguration ceremonies, state funerals, diplomatic banquets, motorcades, rallies, flag-raising ceremonies, parades on national holidays, and the annual Thanksgiving presidential turkey pardon. Even events that aren't usually termed rituals are infused with ritual action, such as campaign speeches, electoral debates, and party conventions. And some rituals are so completely embedded within our cultural world that we easily overlook their political dimensions, such as Thanksgiving and other national holidays, the way we sing the national anthem at baseball games, the appearance of a political official at the funeral of a foreign dignitary, how a political official sinks the first shovel in a groundbreaking ceremony or christens a ship, or a whole slew of sporting events. We can easily see that political rituals can reinforce the political status quo by cloaking leaders or governing bodies with symbols of authority. But we can also see that ritual action is used by those who challenge leaders or prevailing policies. Ritual action can also be performed by dissidents and revolutionaries to delegitimize existing leaders and governments and even stir up anti-government sentiments. It can be a vehicle for political protest and even political transformation. We have to ask, why is ritual so central in politics? What are the characteristics of ritual that make it so useful politically? The omnipresence of ritual in politics might seem jarring, especially since we in the United States like to think of ourselves as rational thinkers. We all routinely participate in and are the audience for political ritual action. We might like to think that we critical thinkers are immune to persuasion through ritual and symbol, and that even if others try to convince us using those mechanisms, we can readily see through them and make decisions solely on the basis of rational decision-making. We might think it is only other, weaker-minded people who are persuaded through ritual and symbol, but I'm not sure it's quite that simple. To delve more deeply into this topic, we have two readings, one which is more theoretical and one is an ethnographic study. First, we will read excerpts from David Kurtzer's Ritual, Politics, and Power. The excerpts from his book that you will read include an introductory theoretical chapter, and then a later segment which analyzes German political ritual action, both in the Nazi era and a more recent attempt by the German Chancellor to achieve ritual reconciliation between Germany and the United States by inviting President Ronald Reagan to a ceremony honoring the German soldiers who died in World War II. I want to highlight here a couple of ideas from the first part of his introductory chapter to set the stage for your reading. In his introductory chapter, Kurtzer talks about the importance of symbols in politics and in political ritual action. He notes that we view the world through symbolic lenses, symbols which are largely provided for us by the culture in which we grow up. In the political realm, people will jockey for influence and power through wielding or trying to align themselves with potent symbols, either visual symbols or concepts. As he says on page 5, quote, creating a symbol, or more commonly identifying oneself with a popular symbol, can be a potent means of gaining and keeping power, for the hallmark of power is the construction of reality, end quote. On that same page, he quotes Max Lerner, who, observing Hitler's march to war, remarked that, quote, men possess thoughts, but symbols possess men. Kurtzer indicates that symbols render concrete what is otherwise abstract. In particular, in a world divided up into nation states, residents must develop some loyalty to the state and that is best accomplished if they can develop emotional attachments to it. On page 6, he quotes Walzer, who said, quote, "The state is invisible. It must be personified before it can be seen, symbolized before it can be loved, imagined before it can be conceived." End quote. Kurtzer goes a step further to suggest that much of political persuasion occurs through symbolic persuasion rather than through rational deliberation of issues. That does not mean that people are irrational, but he says simply that on a day-to-day basis, people largely do not sift and sort through the various issues, but are more often convinced of something through the power of symbols. As he says on page 6, symbols, quote, "furnish the means by which people make sense of the political process, which largely presents itself to people in symbolic form." End quote. He adds that it is not surprising that symbols are so central within politics because they are not only the means through which people interpret the world, but they are how people define their place in the world. As he says on page 8, quote, "It is through symbols that people give meaning to their lives. Full understanding of political allegiances and political action hinges on this fact." End quote. Then Kurtzer delves more deeply into ritual and politics. He adheres to the common anthropological definition of ritual, which is that ritual involves, quote, "culturally standardized, repetitive activity, primarily symbolic in character, aimed at influencing human affairs, or at least allowing humans to understand better their place in the universe." End quote. He notes that the performance of ritual is important for communicating various social and political ideas and values because the performance of ritual is itself part of the social world. People see a ritual or they participate in it. As he says on page 9, quote, "Ritual action not only gives meaning to the universe, it becomes part of the universe." End quote. On page 11, he provides an important analysis of 3 characteristics of symbols that enable them to be so useful in political ritual. Those 3 characteristics are condensation, multivocality, and ambiguity. First, condensation refers to the way in which a single symbol can have a multiplicity of meanings and associations. For example, the American flag can evoke all of the following meanings and more: liberty, equality, duty, sacrifice, responsibility, progress, summertime picnics, baseball, and tradition. The condensation of a symbol means that it can stir up intense emotions as it evokes several concepts simultaneously. But the variety of meanings associated with a symbol also results in the fact that a symbol can mean different things to different people. This is referred to as a symbol's multivocality. To go back to the flag example, the American flag can evoke religious liberty, whereas for others it might evoke equality, whereas for others it might evoke patriarchy, and for others militarism and war. Kurtzer notes that the multivocality of a symbol is very useful politically because it can actually work to bring about solidarity around a symbol, even if not consensus around a single idea, because that same symbol means different things to different people. For example, 10 of us can salute the flag, and we are all saluting 10 different meanings that the flag has for us as individuals. We have political solidarity, but not political consensus. For leaders, solidarity may be more important than consensus. The third related characteristic is that symbols are ambiguous. Because symbols mean multiple things and can mean different things to different people, how any one person at any given time interprets the symbol is difficult to discern. Kurtzer discusses several other dimensions of political ritual action, including the notion that ritual creates a sense of continuity over time. Rituals stir up emotions. Ritual involves compelling drama and asks people to play different roles. Rituals trot out, circulate, and thereby keep alive political symbols and myths, as well as their emotional potency. And finally, rituals can oblige people to perform actions that run counter to more deeply held beliefs, creating a cognitive dissonance that must be resolved. One very compelling quotation in his book is found on page 12, where he says, quote, "Even though ritual does have this creative potential, it also has a conservative bias," end quote. This is the starting point for our discussion question on this topic. Pay close attention to that section of his chapter. What does he mean by conservative as compared to creative? He's not speaking about conservative in the same way as conservatism in U.S. politics. So what does he mean? Why does he make that claim? As you move into the other course materials for this topic, you'll want to assess whether they provide evidence in support of that argument or whether they challenge it. Then you will read Vashi's article on Catalonia's human towers, nationalism, associational culture, and the politics of performance. Catalonia is a region in Spain with its own language, Catalan, and a strong sense of cultural distinctiveness. In October 2015, Catalonia's government moved to secede from Spain. The independence movement has been building over several decades, and in recent years, the ritual performance of building castels has been an integral part of the independence movement. Castells mean castles in the Catalan language, and the practice of building these human towers is considered symbolic of the work of building a cooperative nation. As you're reading this article, ask yourself whether the castell building is an example of Kurtzer's conservatism or creativity. I look forward to reading your ideas in the discussion.